I want to ask you something, and I need you to answer it honestly. Not to me, but to yourself. How long have you been trying to become a profitable trader? 6 months, a year, 3 years? And in that time, how many strategies have you tested? How many courses have you bought? How many YouTube videos have you watched? Because if the answer is a lot, and you're still not where you want to be, then this video is going to tell you something that nobody else has been willing to say directly to your face. The problem is not your strategy. It never was, and it never will be. That might sound harsh right out of the gate. Good. Because what we're going to talk about today is not comfortable. It's not the kind of content that gets made to make you feel good about where you are. Okay? It's the kind of content that gets made to actually move you from where you are to where you want to be. And those are two very different things. Most people who are struggling in trading don't need more information. They need a mirror. And today, I'm going to hold one up. If you've ever blown up an account after a great start, if you've ever followed your rules perfectly for 2 weeks and then broken every single one of them in a single session, if you've ever made money, felt invincible, and then given it all back plus more, then stay right here. This is for you, not for the trader who's looking for the next indicator, not for the person chasing the next hot strategy. This is for the person who's starting to quietly suspect that the problem might be a little closer to home. But before we go any deeper, if you can already feel something stirring just from those first few words, hit that like button right now. Because what we're covering today is something most trading channels will never touch. They want to sell you systems. I want to help you become the kind of person who can actually execute one. Subscribe if you're not already here, because this channel exists for exactly this reason. Not to hand you a shortcut, but to help you build the foundation that makes everything else actually work. Here's the roadmap. We're going to talk about why the market is a perfect mirror for your psychology. We're going to unpack the hidden beliefs that silently destroy your edge before you even place a trade. We're going to get into why discipline isn't something you build the way most people think, and why that misunderstanding keeps you trapped. We're going to talk about identity, the piece almost nobody addresses. And then we're going to talk about what becoming a profitable trader actually looks like from the inside. The real version, not the one that gets posted on social media. This is going to be one of the most honest conversations you've ever had about trading. Let's not waste another second. Here's the first hard truth I want you to sit with. The market doesn't care about you, not in a cold, cruel way, in a completely neutral way. It's like gravity. It doesn't know you're trying. It doesn't reward effort. It doesn't give you extra points for a good week at work, for how many hours you spent studying charts last night, or for how much you need this to work financially. It is perfectly, absolutely, brutally indifferent. And the traders who survive long-term are the ones who stop fighting that indifference and start working with it. But here's what most traders do instead. They come into the market carrying enormous emotional weight. They bring in financial desperation. They bring in ego. They bring in a deep need to be right. They bring in trauma from past losses. They bring in comparisons to traders they follow online who seem to always be winning. And all of that weight, all of that invisible baggage, ends up influencing every single decision they make. Every entry, every exit, every time they move a stop loss, every time they add to a losing position, every time they revenge trade after a bad day. It's all being driven not by the market, but by the stuff they walked in with. I remember a period in my own trading where I was making money pretty consistently for a few months. My rules were simple, my process was solid, my journal was clean. And then I had one week, one really bad week, where I gave back almost everything I had made. And I spent days after that trying to figure out what happened technically. Was it my entries? Was it the market structure? Did I miss something on the higher time frame? I kept going back through the charts looking for the answer like it was hidden somewhere in a candlestick. And the answer wasn't there. The answer was that I had started to feel like I had made it. I had started to get loose. I had started to treat my process like a suggestion rather than a rule. And the moment my psychology shifted, my results shifted too. How the chart didn't change, I changed. That is one of the most important lessons I ever learned. Your trading is a direct reflection of your current psychological state, not your knowledge, not your years of experience, not even your strategy. Your psychological state, right now, today, is determining your results. And until traders really accept that, they stay stuck in this exhausting loop of looking for external answers to internal problems. Now, I know some of you are thinking, okay, I get it, mindset matters. But I want to push back on how most people then understand that phrase, because I think it's being used in a way that actually makes the problem worse. When people say mindset matters, it often sounds like a motivational poster, like something you put on your wall and then forget about. But the kind of psychology we're talking about in trading isn't motivational. It's deeply behavioral. It's about the tiny automatic decisions your brain makes under pressure, under uncertainty, under financial stress. It's not about whether you feel good or bad going into a trade. It's about what you actually do when things don't go the way you expected. Let me give you a character example. I want you to think about a trader. Let's call him James. James has been trading for about 2 years. He's genuinely smart. He's done the work. He can read a chart well. He understands risk management conceptually. He's watched hundreds of hours of content, taken courses, studied professionals. On paper, James knows enough to be profitable, but James has a problem that he hasn't named yet. Every time he takes a loss, he feels it personally. And not just financially, personally, like the loss is proof of something about who he is. And so when he has a losing streak, he doesn't just experience it as a statistical event, which is what it is. He experiences it as an identity attack. And in response, he does what humans do when their identity feels threatened. He fights back. He revenge trades. He doubles his position size. He chases entries he shouldn't take because he needs to make back the money quickly to prove to himself that he's not actually bad at this. And here's the thing. James is not unique. James is the majority of retail traders. The behavior pattern changes slightly from person to person, but the root is the same. Trading has become tied to identity, to self-worth, to proof of something, and that is one of the most toxic dynamics that can exist in a trading career. Yet because the moment your ego is on the line, every time you press a button, you are no longer trading the market. You are trading your emotions. And your emotions, I promise you, do not know anything about support and resistance. This is where I want you to pause and think about your own patterns, not your strategies, your patterns. When you take a loss, what's your automatic internal response? Is it calm and analytical? Okay, that was within my risk parameters. Let me review what I could do better. Or is it something else? Something hotter? Something that makes you want to immediately get back in the market and take it back? If it's the second one, I want you to comment the word pattern below. Because I want to know how many of you recognize yourself in this. And if you do, I want you to know you are not broken. Now, this is a normal human response to loss. But awareness of the pattern is the very first step to changing it. Let's go deeper now into where these patterns come from, because understanding the root changes how you approach the solution. Most traders have an unconscious relationship with money that was formed long before they ever opened a brokerage account. Think about it. How did the people who raised you talk about money? Was it something that was always scarce? Always a source of stress? Always something that had to be fought for? Or was it something that flowed? Something that was managed calmly? Something that represented security and freedom? Because however you grew up thinking about money, those beliefs are running in the background of every trade you make. And I had a conversation once with a trader who had been consistently inconsistent for 3 years. Great month, terrible month, great month, terrible month. We started talking about his childhood, and he mentioned something almost offhandedly. He said his father always said, "Rich people are greedy people." He laughed when he said it, but then we just sat with it for a moment. And he stopped laughing. Because he started to realize every time he got close to having a really good month, something in him would sabotage it. He'd take unnecessary risks. He'd break rules he knew better than to break, not consciously, not on purpose. But some part of him had internalized that making significant money made him a bad person. And so unconsciously, he kept engineering his own failure. Now, I'm not saying everyone has that exact story, but I'm saying your relationship with money has a history, and that history shows up in your trading. If you secretly believe that you don't deserve to be wealthy, you will find a way to give it back. If you believe that trading is gambling and only reckless people do it, you'll either abandon it during a losing streak out of guilt, or you'll self-sabotage when it starts working, because success would mean you were right to be reckless. If you believe that you have to struggle to earn anything, you will unconsciously create struggle even when your edge is working perfectly. These aren't small things. These are foundational, and most trading education never touches them because they're uncomfortable. They're personal, and they don't sell courses as easily as a hot new indicator does. If this is landing for you, I want you to share this video with someone in your trading circle, not to show off, not to start an argument, but because the person you immediately thought of when I started talking about self-sabotage, they need to hear this too. The link is right there. Drop it in a message right now. Seriously. Now let's talk about something that might be the most misunderstood concept in all of trading psychology. And that concept is discipline. Every struggling trader thinks their problem is discipline. I hear it constantly. I know what I need to do, I just can't make myself do it. If I could just be more disciplined, everything would be different. I need to find a way to stick to my rules. And the solution they reach for, almost universally, is willpower. They try harder, they make promises to themselves, they write affirmations, and they set alerts. They tell themselves this time is different. And for a while, sometimes it works. They're disciplined for a week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month. And then something happens. A bad trade, an emotional trigger, a moment of overconfidence, and suddenly all that willpower evaporates, and they're right back where they started. Here's what nobody talks about. Willpower is not a sustainable strategy. Willpower is a finite resource. Psychologists have studied this extensively. The phenomenon called ego depletion, the idea that the more decisions you have to force yourself to make throughout the day, the less cognitive and emotional resources you have to make good decisions later. So if you're white-knuckling your way through every single trade, fighting your impulses every single time you look at a chart, draining your willpower with every session, you are setting yourself up to fail, not because you're weak, because you're human. The traders who appear to have perfect discipline are not exercising more willpower than you. They have built systems that remove the need for willpower in the first place. Their rules are so clear, their routines are so consistent, and, most importantly, their identity is so aligned with who they are as a trader that following the rules doesn't feel like discipline. It feels like just being themselves. Let me sit with that last point for a second, because it's crucial. Identity. Who you believe you are as a trader determines how you behave as a trader. Not the rules you write down, not the affirmations you say in the mirror, your deepest, most automatic sense of who you are. If you identify at your core as someone who struggles to be consistent, you will be inconsistent because you're acting in alignment with your identity. Humans are wired to be consistent with who they believe they are. It's one of the most powerful psychological forces that exist. And most traders are trying to act in ways that conflict with their self-image, which creates enormous internal tension, which eventually leads to what we call a breakdown in discipline. Think about a trader who grew up in an environment where everything was unpredictable, where plans never worked out, where trying to be organized or systematic was somehow pointless because life would just blow it up anyway. That person didn't just grow up with a difficult childhood. They grew up building a nervous system that is calibrated for chaos. And when they sit down to trade, a small, quiet part of them is actually more comfortable when things are messy, more comfortable taking impulsive trades, more comfortable breaking rules. Not because they're self-destructive, because their nervous system was literally trained to operate that way, changing discipline from the outside, by trying harder, by adding more rules, by holding yourself more accountable, is like trying to renovate the outside of a house while the foundation is cracked. You can make it look better for a while, but at some point the cracks show up again. Real, lasting discipline in trading starts with identity. It starts with the question, who am I becoming? Not who do I want to be? Who am I in the process of becoming right now, today, with every decision I make? Because every time you follow your rules when it's hard, you're not just making a good trade decision. You're casting a vote for who you are. Every time you close your laptop after a losing session without revenge trading, you're not just saving your account. You're building evidence of a new identity, an identity that says, I am someone who has control. I am someone who trusts the process. I am someone who thinks long-term. And the beautiful thing about identity-based change is that once you have enough evidence, the behavior starts to feel automatic. You stop fighting yourself. You stop needing willpower for the same things, because the behavior has become congruent with who you believe you are. Now, I want to stop here and be real with you for a second, because I don't want this to sound like a self-help speech. Building a new identity takes time. It doesn't happen from watching one video or reading one book. It happens through consistent action, small, repeated, daily action over a long period of time. And there will be moments when you slip, when old patterns return, when you look at your behavior and feel like you haven't changed at all. Those moments are normal. They are not evidence of failure. They are part of the process. The question isn't whether you'll have setbacks. The question is what you do immediately after a setback, because that response, right there, is where identity is built or broken. If after a setback you say, see, I knew I couldn't do this, I'm just not built for trading, you're reinforcing the old identity. If you say, okay, that happened, what triggered it? What can I do differently? Who do I need to be to handle this differently next time? That's the identity of someone who will eventually get to where they want to go. Give this video a like right now if you're hearing something you know you needed to hear. Seriously, it takes 1 second and it tells me I'm on the right track with this kind of content. Now let's talk about one of the most dangerous psychological traps in trading, and it's one that gets talked about far too rarely. I call it the competence illusion, and almost every trader falls into it at some point, usually right when things start going well. Here's how it works. You're new to trading, you're learning, you're cautious. You're not sure what you're doing, so you follow your rules closely because you're scared not to. And then something happens. You start to get it. Your trades start working. Your read of the market feels sharper, your entries are cleaner, your confidence grows, and that's all good. That's all part of the process. But then for a lot of traders, something subtle and dangerous starts to happen underneath the surface. They start to attribute their success to themselves in a way that inflates their sense of certainty. They start to think, I've got this figured out. They start to take bigger positions than their system calls for because they're sure about this one. They start to bypass their rules for entries that feel right. They start to think of their rules as training wheels that they've outgrown, and then the market shifts, or they hit a normal statistical losing streak. Or they take a trade that should have worked and doesn't. And instead of responding to that loss as a professional would, with analysis, with adjustment, with composure, they respond with confusion and frustration, because in their inflated state of competence, they had quietly started to believe that losing wasn't supposed to happen anymore. That they were past that. and now the loss feels like a betrayal instead of a business expense. The competence illusion is fed by another cognitive bias that every trader needs to understand: attribution bias. When we succeed, we naturally attribute it to skill. When we fail, we naturally attribute it to external factors. The news came out, the market was choppy, my broker had a slippage issue, someone was stop hunting me. This isn't unique to traders, it's basic human psychology. But in trading, where randomness plays a much larger role than most people are comfortable admitting, this bias is particularly destructive. I want to tell you about a real moment of reckoning I had. There was a stretch in my trading where I had what I genuinely thought was a breakthrough. My results were great for about 2 months. I was hitting targets consistently, managing risk beautifully, and I felt like something had fundamentally clicked. I started getting asked questions in forums. I started feeling like I had some answers. I started loosening up my rules slightly because my instincts felt so sharp. You can probably already see where this is going. The next month was one of my worst months ever, not because the market changed dramatically, not because my strategy suddenly stopped working, yet because I had unconsciously stopped executing it properly. My loosened rules, my inflated confidence, my belief that I could rely more on feel and less on structure, all of it combined to create a disaster that I then spent 2 painful months recovering from, financially and psychologically. What I learned from that experience was one of the most counterintuitive lessons in all of trading. You have to be equally disciplined when you're winning as when you're losing. Actually, you need to be more vigilant when you're winning, because winning is when the ego comes in. Winning is when the stories about yourself start getting dangerously comfortable. Winning is when you start to confuse luck with skill, confidence with arrogance, and freedom from process with mastery. The market will always find a way to humble you when you forget that humility is not optional. Here's a pattern I want you to check yourself against. Think about your best trading month. Really think about it. Now ask yourself honestly, were you following your rules more strictly that month? Or were you getting a little loose with them because things were going well? For most traders who answer honestly, the answer is loose. And that looseness, that gradual drift, is almost always what precedes a bad period. The bad period doesn't come because of some mystery. It comes because of small, incremental compromises that accumulate until they cost you. If you want to comment below, tell me this. Have you ever had a great month followed by a terrible month? And looking back now, can you see where the drift started? Comment drifted below. And I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to know how universal this experience is, because I already know the answer. It's almost universal. And knowing you're not alone in this is actually important. Let me transition now into something that I think is the heart of this whole conversation, and it might be the thing that most needs to be said. The question most struggling traders are asking is, how do I become profitable? But I want to suggest that this is actually the wrong question. Not because profitability isn't the goal, but because asking that question keeps you focused on outcomes, and outcomes in trading are never fully under your control. The question that actually produces lasting results is a different one. That question is, who do I need to become? This isn't a philosophical detour. This is the most practical thing I can tell you. Because the truth is, the strategies for profitable trading are not secret. They're not hidden in a $10,000 course. The core principles: manage risk, respect your edge, be patient, cut losses, let winners run, don't overtrade, be consistent. These are publicly available, freely shared, widely understood. There is no knowledge gap keeping most traders from profitability. The gap is not informational, the gap is personal. The gap is who you are right now versus who you need to be to execute what you already know. Think about what that means. You probably already know that you shouldn't revenge trade. You know that adding to a losing position is dangerous. You know that trading out of FOMO leads to bad entries. Well, you know that moving your stop loss to avoid taking a loss usually makes things worse. You know all of this, and yet, in moments of pressure, in moments of financial fear or ego threat, you sometimes do these things anyway. That's not a knowledge problem. That is an identity and nervous system problem, and the solution has to happen at that level. So what does it actually look like to work on yourself at that level? Let me get practical for a moment. The first thing, and this sounds simple, but almost nobody does it deeply enough, is radical honesty about your current state, not the trader you want to be, the trader you actually are right now. What triggers you? What emotional states cause you to break rules? Is it a specific loss size? Is it watching someone else's winning trade that you missed? Is it trading when you're tired? Is it the end of the month when you're behind your target? Whatever your triggers are, you need to know them. Not vaguely, specifically, because you can't manage what you can't name. I kept a psychological journal for an entire year, separate from my trading journal. Every day after a session, I didn't just write down what trades I took and why. I wrote down what I was feeling, what was going on in my life that day, what my energy level was, whether I slept well, whether I was stressed about something unrelated to trading. And over time, patterns emerged that I never would have seen otherwise. I started to notice that my worst trading sessions almost always followed days when I had a conflict with someone close to me, or when I was under financial pressure from something other than trading. But my trading performance was being affected by my emotional state in ways that had nothing to do with the market. Once I saw that clearly, I could start to do something about it, which sometimes just meant not trading on certain days. That alone, that one piece of self-knowledge, improved my results meaningfully. The second thing is understanding your risk tolerance at the emotional level, not just the mathematical level. Mathematically, you might have decided to risk 2% per trade. But emotionally, what does losing 2% actually feel like to you? Does it feel manageable? Or does it feel catastrophic? Because if it feels catastrophic, even if it's technically within your plan, you're going to behave as though it's catastrophic. You're going to move stop losses. You're going to close trades early. You're going to hesitate on the next entry because of the pain of the last loss. Your emotional risk tolerance and your mathematical risk tolerance have to be aligned. If they're not, drop your position size until they are. It's not weakness, it's self-knowledge. And self-knowledge in trading is everything. Third thing, and this is one I want to spend a moment on because I think it's underestimated. Find a way to make peace with uncertainty. This might be the hardest thing for analytical, intelligent, hardworking traders because those personality types often struggle deeply with ambiguity. They want clear answers. They want definitive setups. They want to know. But trading is fundamentally an exercise in managing probabilities in the presence of irreducible uncertainty. You will never know if any given trade is going to work. Never. Even your best setups will fail regularly, and the traders who can hold that uncertainty without it triggering an anxiety spiral, without it sending them to look for more confluence, more confirmation, more certainty that they can't actually get, those traders have a massive psychological advantage. One of my favorite mental shifts around this is to think about trading not in terms of individual trades, but in terms of the next 100 trades. Any individual trade is nearly meaningless in terms of information. It either works or it doesn't, and you can't draw valid conclusions from one data point. But over 100 trades, your edge, if you have one, will show up, and that reframe does something powerful psychologically. It makes any single loss feel much less significant. It makes you much less attached to any individual outcome. And it helps you stay in process mode rather than results mode. And process mode is where all long-term success in trading lives. If you're still watching this, if you're still with me 20+ minutes in, I want you to know something. You're already showing the kind of patience and willingness to go deep that separates traders who grow from traders who stay stuck. And if you want more content like this, the kind that goes past the surface, the kind that actually challenges you to look inward, subscribe to this channel. Because this is what we do here. Not strategies, not setups. The real work. I want to address something directly now that I know comes up for a lot of you, and it's something that generates a kind of shame that keeps traders from getting the help they need. And that's the question of time. How long does this actually take? How long before you can expect to be consistently profitable? Here's the hard truth that the industry doesn't want to say clearly. For most people, it takes years. Not weeks, not months. Years. Now, the exact timeline varies enormously based on how much you're trading, how deeply you're reflecting, whether you have mentors and accountability, how efficiently you're learning from your mistakes, and how much raw psychological work you're doing alongside your technical development. But if you've been trading for 3 months and you're frustrated that you're not profitable yet, I want you to hear this. You are not behind. You are brand new. In any other skilled profession, medicine, law, architecture, you would be in your first year of school. You wouldn't even be licensed to practice yet. And yet traders regularly beat themselves up for not being profitable in year 1, 2, or even 3. Because the marketing around trading has convinced people this is supposed to be fast. It's not fast. The learning curve is long, and most of that learning curve isn't about finding better strategies. It's about developing yourself. The markets don't care how much you know. They care about what you do. And what you do under pressure, under uncertainty, with real money on the line, is determined by who you are. And developing who you are takes time. That's not a pessimistic statement. It's actually liberating. Because it means you can stop expecting yourself to be somewhere you're not yet. You can stop treating every bad month as evidence that this doesn't work. And you can start treating the whole journey as the curriculum. Not just the good parts, not just the wins, but all of it. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Priya. Priya came to trading after a career in finance. She was analytical, meticulous, and deeply risk-averse, which she thought would be advantages. And they were, in some ways. She took small position sizes from the beginning. She kept detailed journals, she back-tested everything. But Priya had a problem that her professional background had actually made worse. She could not accept being wrong. In her finance career, precision was paramount. Analysis was supposed to lead to correct answers. And so when a trade setup she had researched thoroughly failed, when the market did something that her analysis said it wouldn't, it didn't just feel like a loss. It felt like a fundamental breakdown of logic, and that feeling was intolerable to her. So Priya developed a pattern. When a trade started to go against her, she would spend the time the trade was open doing additional research, looking for more evidence that she was right. She would add to the position because the new analysis confirmed her bias. She would hold through drawdowns that her rules said to exit because she was sure the market would come around, and sometimes it did, which made the pattern harder to break. But when it didn't, the losses were enormous compared to what they should have been. Not because her analysis was bad, because her relationship to being wrong was broken. Priya's journey to consistent trading took almost 4 years. But she got there. And the transformation wasn't technical. She was technically competent from year 1. The transformation was her developing the ability to say out loud in real time, "I might be wrong about this." And that's okay. The rules exist for exactly this moment. That simple sentence, said genuinely, felt genuinely, changed everything for her. I share Priya's story because I want you to see that your professional strengths can sometimes be trading weaknesses. The doctor's precision, the engineer's need for certainty, the entrepreneur's confidence, these are all powerful in their domain. But trading requires a different kind of intelligence. an intelligence that can hold uncertainty comfortably. That can be wrong repeatedly without losing faith in the process. That can be both analytical and emotionally regulated simultaneously. That kind of intelligence isn't learned from books. It's earned through experience, reflection, and the willingness to do the inner work. Now, I want to bring this all together by talking about what becoming a profitable trader actually looks like when it's working. Not the version that gets posted on social media. The real version. The real version looks boring a lot of the time. Consistently profitable traders wake up with a plan. They do a pre-session review. They check their emotional state as deliberately as they check the charts. They sit in front of their screens for hours and do nothing when there's nothing to do. And they feel fine about that. They take their entries without hesitation because they're confident in their process. They take their losses with a composure that sometimes surprises even them. Now, they end the day with a review that is honest and dispassionate. Not brutal self-criticism, not defensive excuse-making, but genuine inquiry. What worked? What didn't? What can I take from today? They do not live in their trading platform. They do not check positions every 10 minutes from their phones. They do not talk about their trades constantly because their self-esteem is not dependent on those trades. They have other things in their lives that matter to them. They exercise, they sleep, they maintain relationships. They take care of themselves as human beings because they understand that their mental and physical state is the foundation of their trading performance. And when they have a bad week, because they still have bad weeks, they don't catastrophize. They don't question everything. They don't abandon their system. They review the week with the same calm process they use after a good week. They make whatever small adjustments are warranted, and they move forward. Because they trust the process, not because the process has never failed them, but because they know that results in any given week are far less meaningful than results over months and years. And they have the psychological resilience to operate on that time horizon without coming undone. That psychological resilience, that is the thing you're building when you do the inner work. Not just the strategies, not just the rules, the resilience, the ability to stay in the game long enough for your edge to compound. Because that's what most traders never discover. The real edge in trading isn't the strategy. It's the ability to stay in the game. Now, I've seen traders with genuinely mediocre strategies who were profitable because their psychology was solid. They took their losses quickly. They didn't overtrade, they were consistent. And I've seen traders with genuinely excellent strategies who couldn't hold on to anything because their psychology was a mess. Every time their edge went through a normal drawdown period, they abandoned it and went looking for something else. They were always starting over, never building. The market rewards consistency over time. And consistency is fundamentally a psychological achievement. It's the result of an internal environment, beliefs, identity, emotional regulation, that makes consistent behavior feel natural rather than forced. That internal environment doesn't get built overnight, but it gets built. One session at a time, one journaling entry at a time, one moment of following your rules when your emotions are screaming at you to do something else. Each of those moments is not just a trading decision. It's an investment in who you are becoming. And who you are becoming as a trader will eventually determine what you make as a trader far more than any strategy ever will. I want to leave you with something before we close this out, and I want you to really hear it. The hardest part of becoming a profitable trader is not the learning. It's the unlearning. Unlearning the belief that fast results are possible or even healthy. Unlearning the belief that being smart is enough. Unlearning the story that says this loss means something about your worth as a person. Unlearning the need to be right more than you need to be profitable. And unlearning the idea that discipline is about willpower rather than identity. Unlearning the comparison between your real journey and someone else's highlight reel. These unlearnings don't happen at once. They happen gradually, uncomfortably, sometimes painfully. But they happen. And every time one of them shifts, you get a little lighter. The market gets a little less personal. The process gets a little cleaner. The results start to follow. Not because you got lucky, not because you found a magic strategy, but because you became someone who could execute consistently over time. That's the real achievement, not the account balance, not the screenshots, not the trading lifestyle that gets sold to you in ads. The real achievement is becoming someone who has enough self-knowledge, self-regulation, and self-respect to navigate one of the most psychologically demanding activities a human being can engage in, and to do it with integrity and composure day after day, through good weeks and bad weeks, through drawdowns and strong runs, through all of it. You are not just trying to make money. You are trying to become someone. And that someone, the trader with the right psychology, the right process, the right identity, will make money as a natural consequence of who they've become. So here's your identity reframe, and I want you to carry this with you. You are not a struggling trader looking for a strategy that finally works. You are someone in the process of becoming a professional. That process has a beginning, a long middle, and an eventual arrival. You are somewhere in that middle. And the middle is not a failure. The middle is where all the real work happens. The middle is where character gets built. The middle is where the traders who will eventually succeed separate from the ones who won't. Not by finding better strategies, but by refusing to quit on themselves. Keep your process. Keep your journal. Keep doing the inner work. Keep asking who you need to become, not just what you need to know. And keep showing up. Even when it's hard, even when results feel distant, even when you don't feel like it. Because showing up is the vote. Every session you approach with professionalism is a vote for the trader you're becoming. And those votes accumulate. I promise you, they accumulate. Before you go, and I mean this, please don't skip this, there are 3 things I need from you if this video did anything for you today. First, hit the like button. It literally takes 1 second and it helps this video reach traders who need to hear this. Most of the people who needed this, most will never find it if you don't help push it out. So please, like the video. Second, if you're not subscribed, subscribe right now. We go this deep on every single video. This is not a strategy channel. This is a psychology channel for serious traders, and there's nothing else like it. If you found value here today, there's a lot more where this came from. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Third, leave a comment below. Tell me which part of today's video hit hardest for you. Was it the identity piece? The competence illusion? The thing about money beliefs? The Priya story? Tell me. Your comment doesn't just help the algorithm. It starts a conversation. And this community is where some of the most important realizations happen for people in exactly your position. And if you know a trader, a friend, a partner, a community member who is grinding and struggling and wondering if they're just not cut out for this, share this video with them. Not to tell them they're doing something wrong, but to tell them, hey, this channel sees you, and there might be something here that helps. That share might be the thing that keeps them in the game long enough to actually make it. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Really. The fact that you watched this far, that you stayed with the discomfort, that you were willing to look inward, that is itself evidence that you are the kind of trader who can get where you're trying to go. Not because watching a YouTube video changes anything, but because the willingness to look honestly at yourself is the prerequisite for everything else. And you just showed that willingness. The market will still be there tomorrow. Go be the trader you're becoming.